In southern Spain, there is an unbelievable destination that slips under the radar for people outside of Europe. It's a Spanish city with everything you love about the country packed into a tight little package. The walkable, bikeable former island has stunning beaches, well-preserved architectural eye candy, and a rich history that made it one of Spain's most important cities. It even doubled as Havana in the 2002 James Bond film Die Another Day, with locations that I'll point out as we go. Cadiz has a long, important, and fascinating history, so take a ride with me on one of the world's great bike rides as I tell you all about it. I've started at Hotel Cadiz Bahia because this is where the uninterrupted and dedicated path begins. It's also where we stayed while we were in town. The beach hotels all seemed pretty nice, and there is a cluster down here, so I recommend this spot if you are hoping to get some beach time while in town. The hotel had a sweet infinity pool, so we had the option of swimming at the hotel or at the beach. If you like the vibe of an old city, then you can find plenty of those options near our destination. The path does continue south in the other direction, but it's a multi-use path that is much better for walking than biking. The route I've chosen for today is about 5 miles long and is almost entirely in protected or off-street bike lanes, and I think it's a great all-ages ride. This path represents at least 90% of what the lanes will look like, and the trip is completely flat. These blue lines on the map show where the protected bike lanes are, so there's another off-street route parallel to us, but who would choose that route when we've got miles of uninterrupted path along the beach just a few blocks away? The first half will follow this beach on the west side, before cutting across the city wall to the east, and then making a fishhook shape as we follow the natural border around the main city, and finally finish at the city's main plaza. What do I think about biking in Cadiz? Well, let me point out a few things as we go, and I'll share my thoughts at the end. On this stretch of beach, there are soccer nets set up as part of a highly rated beach soccer school. Parents rave about sending their kids here while on holiday. This beach is Playa de la Victoria, and it was super clean. We saw people come down the beach every day to clean it and keep it looking great. The beach looks to the west, so this is a memorable place to come and watch the sun sink into the Atlantic. Behind us there are a couple of beach clubs where you can enjoy a drink on the sand, and in Spanish these are called chiringuitos. It looks like you may be able to walk for miles south along the beach, but it wasn't something that I took the time to do on this trip. One last thing that I'll point out behind us is the soccer stadium. Unfortunately, the big local club, Cadiz CF, was relegated from Spain's top division, La Liga, in 2024. Hopefully they get promoted back up so that you can once again see some of Europe's top clubs play in this incredible city. I dreamed about coming down here when we lived in Valencia, but we didn't make it until the summertime, which is the off-season. I rented my bike at a place called Las Bicis Naranjas, which translates to the orange bikes. Their location is in the city center, which wasn't ideal for where I stayed, but they had e-bikes and the prices were incredible. They were also super friendly, and I believe they spoke English, in case that's a concern. Cadiz does not have a bull ring like most Spanish cities. Just ahead a couple of blocks there used to be one, but it has been torn down and is now an open space called Asdrubal Plaza. There is a protected bike lane just ahead that takes you to the plaza, and later, Avenida Constitución de 1812, which leads to the bridge with the same name. That bridge is the most direct route to the mainland, but the bridge itself does not allow bikes or pedestrians. There are ferries that run a couple of times per day if you were looking to get over there without driving. It's really a shame that you can't walk or ride across the bridge because it is only a decade old, and recently, cities in Spain have been much smarter about active modes of transportation. So many Spaniards get around without cars. The stunning bridge is also called La Pepa, which translates to seed, and was designed by Javier Monterola. We are about to reach the end point of Eurovelo 8, which is a bike route that spans from here to Greece, and the island of Cyprus if you want to be technical. This is an under-construction bike route that uses existing trails, both on and off the street, that connects countries on the Mediterranean and Adriatic seas. The surfaces are often paved, but you will find yourself on dirt sections in its current form. We actually rode on a short section in this video from Barcelona as the route cut through that city. I have a link to an interactive map in the description, and in it you can see that the segment between here and Conil de la Frontera is labeled with Eurovelo signs and stretches about 29 miles. There are unlabeled trails that go another 100 miles to Estepona, and then it turns into sections that are currently being planned. In addition to these routes, there are 3 Vías Verdes, called greenways in English, that are not too far from here, and let me tell you about those. Vía Verde Entre Rios, between rivers, is a 10-mile segment of trail that is north of here. Vía Verde Puerto Real San Fernando is actually bikeable from here if you head south. The Greenway itself is about 5 miles long, and this is what I would have ridden if I was looking for a nice long ride in the area. A one-way ride out to Puerto Real, including the Greenway section, is about 15 miles. The third and final section of greenways is the Vía Verde de Matagorda. This greenway is only a couple of miles and is just west of Puerto Real, and could be added to that previous ride, as the gap between the two is relatively short. There's a restaurant that overlooks a lovely beach that you can access right from this area. I was curious to see it and recorded a super short video riding down the ramp. The restaurant has okay reviews on Google, but I can't speak from experience. Take this ramp to get down to the restaurant and beach. We could continue straight and stay in this bike lane, but there are a couple of landmarks on the eastern side of Cadiz that I want to point out to you, such as the historic port, the train station, and a handful of inviting parks and plazas. The bike path almost completely circles the old city, with just a few gaps that have you on a mixed-use promenade or briefly on a low-traffic street. Turn right here at Calle Barcelona. Down below is what remains of a moat that is now used as an open space. Later that day, when the wall provided some shade, there were people playing pickup soccer, and with just a little bit more time, I would have loved to join them. The footprint of the wall in this section is technically a bastion, which is an area that extends outward from the city gate that helped with protection. Once we get around it, we will be at the main gate, which is called Puerta de Tierra. This portion of the wall was built in the 1500s, and in 1850 the tower in the center was built as part of an optical telegraph network. Follow the green path to the wall, then ride along it as we cross both directions of traffic. These large arches over the road were built in the early 1900s to accommodate a growing city and eventually automobile traffic. Over to the right is a dog park and a sneaky way to get down to the main train station. The lane is not green over here, but you should be able to see it and continue riding off the street. The wall separates the old town from the modern section, which is locally referred to as Puerta Tierra. We arrived in town at this train station, and I can't imagine a better way of arriving. Despite being way down in the southwest corner of the country, you can find one-seat train rides to Seville, Cordoba, Madrid, and there's even a full-day route all the way up to Barcelona in the northeast. It stops in Valencia, and I dreamed about coming down for a La Liga game, but couldn't quite make it happen when we lived here. That route is called Torre Oro, and it looks like it's an Alvia train. There are also 2 local trains that run from the station, one to Jerez de la Frontera to the north, and one to Chiclana de la Frontera to the south. One option for a bike trip would be to take one of these trains out to the countryside to enjoy a longer, more rural experience. In addition to trains down here, there are intercity buses that can take you as far away as A Coruña in northwest Spain and Lisbon, Portugal. Neither option is quick, but travelers looking to save money should consider the bus. Once we pass the train station, we reach the eastern edge of the old city. This port is traditionally where ships arrived and is still quite heavily used. Cruise ships bring passengers regularly, and this is one of the great ports of call because passengers can just take a short walk to the city center. There is also a ferry terminal right here. You can get to Rota, which is north of Cadiz on mainland Spain. But a more exciting option is a ferry to the Canary Islands. That is one of the big ferries that you can take from several of Spain's ports, and you can even bring pets, your bike, and while it's not my cup of tea, yes, you can bring a car. It's not a short trip, and flying is always an option, but the ferry is a great alternative for people who value the journey over the destination. Cross the street here if you'd like to go directly to the main plaza, called Plaza de San Juan. This bike trip will eventually end here, but there is still so much to see before we get there. The tree-lined area across the street is park space with a playground. This is a good spot to hang outside with a drink and watch your kid burn off some energy. The view is not awesome between these fences, so we teleported ahead about a minute. Around the corner here is a second cruise terminal, and that's where all of these people are coming from. Another shortcut would be to continue straight in the crosswalk with these people to Plaza Espana. I stuck with the bike lane to see what was around this corner of the old city, and then circled back to Plaza Espana. About 300 cruise ships stop here every year for a total of nearly 500,000 passengers. Barcelona is the only Spanish city with more stops. In recent years, Cadiz has pushed for cruises to start and end here as part of an overall campaign to receive more visitors on either end of the trips. If they are successful, then you'll want to get to Cadiz sooner rather than later, because cities like Venice, Italy can attest that thousands of cruise visitors can have a crushing impact on a city's infrastructure. A large part of the charm in this city is that it largely flies under the radar and can absorb its current load of tourists. For biking, there is not much over here, but you can walk to the top of the seawall to watch seawater crash on the weathered stone. This area and the cruise terminal are part of San Felipe Point, and the saint's name is also used for the small beach on the other side of this wall and the battery above us. This road is not bike-friendly, so we are taking a detour through a plaza and along another old section of protective wall. This is called Baluarte y Murallas de San Carlos, which was constructed in the 1700s by Carlos III. The fortifications were strategically located here to protect the port and the commerce that ran through it. The structure occasionally hosts events, and it looks like you can go to the top and see the cannons. This is Plaza Espana, and the main feature is a tall monument that commemorates the Constitution of 1812. It was nice to find a shady spot on this hot day. A couple of amenities here are a public water fountain and a playground. Stay to the right and head down Calle Fermín Salvochea. These next few blocks are just a short section without off-street lanes, but we will pick them up once again once we get back to the seawall. The street is basically an alley with a 10-kilometer speed limit, so I'd still feel safe riding here with less confident riders. In some Spanish cities, you would see this type of street labeled a cicloruta, or in English, a cycle route. One main concern is watching for cross traffic at the small intersections. Once we arrive at Alameda Apodaca, we would need to cross over the street, where we can once again join the bike lane. Another option is to ride along the promenade, which I think is allowed. If you take it slow and crowds are light, then I don't think it's a problem. Later in the video, I actually do ride where I'm not allowed, so stick around for a minute to see me get yelled at by a local. It's really delightful along this section, as there is a small cafe kiosk, precious park space, trees to fight the heat, and stunning tile work. Also along this section there are 4 busts of prominent Spanish-speaking figures. They include Miguel Ramos Arizpe, a Mexican priest and politician, Miguel Grau, a Peruvian naval officer, and Ruben Dario, a poet from Nicaragua. The 4th is José Martí, who was a Cuban poet and philosopher, whose representation here seems a bit ironic, as he was killed fighting for Cuba's independence against Spain. At the corner is a fortified section of the wall, and this one is called Baluarte de Candelaria. The fortress was built in 1672 and is now a venue for concerts and exhibitions. The thin, lush strip of park space to our left is called Paseo de Carlos III Garden. I went back to ride through it, and I'm glad I did. Look at how beautiful this space is. The tiles, trees, flowers, and pergola are just stunning. The garden is part of the larger Parque Genovés. The park has an interesting assortment of plants and flowers, a small waterfall, and a bridge. On the far end is another playground. The name Genovés refers to Genoa, Italy. Let's take a look over the edge here to see how beautifully blue the water here is. Like the previous park space, this is a crucial spot for beating the heat and is also served by a cafe. The promenade over here is called Santa Barbara, where there is a skate park and a dog park. Just a few blocks from here is the University of Cadiz. The school has origins that trace back to the 1500s, but the modern university was established in 1979. They are known for their medical and marine science programs, and there are 15,000 to 20,000 students enrolled. They participate in the Erasmus program, which promotes students to travel to other countries to share ideas and boost innovation in education, youth, and sport. They also had a program in Valencia, and we would occasionally meet people in it. The next building is a modern 4-star hotel. They have some of the usual amenities here like pools, a gym, and a sauna. But the thing that stood out to me was the rooftop area with a 360-degree view, a bar, and occasional live music. The seawall is part of the Santa Catalina Castle, which we will see from the other direction in just a minute. A few blocks away is another unexpected statue, this one of Simón Bolívar, who was known as the Great Liberator. Just like with Martí, I found it to be interesting to see a statue of someone in Spain who for decades would have been one of the most hated figures in the country. Simón Bolívar was one of the primary figures responsible for Spain's fall as a global empire, as all of the former territories in South America eventually won their independence from the country. In 1596, as part of the Anglo-Spanish War, Cadiz was taken by English and Dutch forces. The Spanish commander was unprepared and unorganized, which led to an easy victory. When the Spanish burned their own treasure fleet, the invading forces burned a quarter of the city and took prominent locals back to England to be used for ransom. These losses contributed to Spain's bankruptcy the following year. The hostages would not be released for 7 years. In response to the devastating losses, the Spanish built several fortresses, including this one, Santa Catalina. I wrote in because I was curious, but apparently they weren't happy that I was writing, so I played a dumb gringo and made my way out. It's free to tour the 17th century fortress, and there are public restrooms here. This next part of the tour is a hotspot of shooting locations from the James Bond film, Die Another Day. Part of the film was set in Havana, Cuba, but the logistics of filming in that country left the producers seeking an alternative. The city of Cadiz, like Havana, has colonial architecture and a fortified old city on the water, so it worked pretty well once you added the mid-20th century cars. Halle Berry's iconic scene where she comes in from the beach was shot right here at Playa de la Caleta. When Berry and Pierce Brosnan meet one another, you can see Castillo de Santa Catalina in the background. The beach is a popular spot and it looks like you can rent kayaks. The white buildings are part of the University of Cadiz campus. The building on the water is Balneario de la Palma, which is a health spa and surf school. In Die Another Day, the facility was Havana's Grand Palacio Hotel. If you're enjoying these biking videos from around the world, then take a second to subscribe. We just hit the 1,000 subscriber mark, and if all of you were on bikes and waiting at a red light, then the group would stretch for 1/4 mile, or 400 meters for you international viewers. But if each of you were in a car, then that line would stretch 12 times longer at nearly 3 miles long, or 5 kilometers. And parking those cars would eat up 2 soccer pitches worth of valuable space. A quick excursion is to go through that arch and out to the castle. There is a 1/4 mile footbridge that is open to the public, and I thought it was a really fun and unique detour. The castle itself was closed when I was there, but I think sometimes it opens. I recorded a separate short video from here out to the castle, and here's the link. The views get better as you get out there, and the perspective looking back at Cadiz is not one to be missed. It can be a little chilly out there, so dress accordingly. I did it on my bike, but you can definitely just take a nice long walk out there. One of the fun things we did while in town was visit the tallest tower in Cadiz. It's called Torre Tavera, and from its rooftop terrace you have an incredible 360-degree view of the city. In addition, there is something called a camera obscura, which is a really neat attraction. Just below the rooftop terrace is an optical lens that magnifies the area it is pointed at and projects it onto a white, concave surface inside a dark room. The result is a non-electric way of viewing a magnified world around you in what looks like a high-definition live stream. There is some cool science to it, so it's a fun way to learn about lenses and see the city from above. The cost was about $10 per person. This beautiful section reminded me of the Malecón in Cuba, reinforcing the plausibility that this could be La Habana. Cadiz has a market with fresh seafood and prepared food vendors. It's a little bit run down and reviews are mixed, but we enjoyed a nice evening happy hour and meal here. It follows traditional Spanish hours, so the market is closed between 4 and 8 p.m. and starts to fill up by 9. The market also doubled as Raúl's cigar factory in the Bond film. It's located just a block to our left from here. Starting to come into view and dominate the skyline is the city's main cathedral, called the Cathedral of the Holy Cross over the waters. Like Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, this site took several generations to complete. As a result, multiple architects helmed the project and imposed their vision on it. The finished version incorporated the original Baroque and Rococo elements, such as curving natural forms, but the building's dominant features are the towers and domes, in addition to elements such as symmetry, natural material, and vertical lines, which make the structure neoclassical above all. In total, the church took 116 years to complete. Next to it is the Sagrario Tower, which served as the roof to Raoul's cigar factory. And just behind the tower are the ruins of the Roman theater. We took the time to tour it, which we really recommend. It's free, and you're allowed to get up close to the ruins, which includes walking through the tunnels underneath. The theater was built in the 1st century BC, and it wasn't even discovered until 1980, and it's interesting to see how they balanced preserving history with respecting the homes of the residents living on and around the site. This final stretch will give you an idea of what it is like to ride in the old city. There are very few cars, but there can be dense pockets of people. You wouldn't want to ride fast through the old city, but it is a decent way of getting around a little bit faster than walking. I told you earlier that I would give you my thoughts on biking here. I am a huge fan of Cadiz. The flat topography, the connected network of lanes, and a huge area where bikes easily mix with pedestrians make this a world-class city for bikes. In addition, the relatively easy access to the countryside with a few local greenways make this one of my favorites. I highly recommend coming to Cadiz and exploring it by bike and foot if you have the chance. The Arco del Populo was one of the original gates that provided access to the seaport. The waters used to come up nearly as far as this gate, which meant the plaza where we are headed would have been covered in water. Over time, it was filled in, and the port was built further out to allow for larger ships. Plaza San Juan de Dios seems to be the city's main plaza. There is open space, and it is surrounded by cafes and shops. Sometimes there are vendors that are set up in the middle of the plaza. It's a short walk from the port, so cruise passengers are likely to flood this area if they are docked. So what do you think of Cadiz? If you're making a trip to Granada, Cordoba, and/or Sevilla, and you have the time, I think it's an incredible city that should not be missed. Enjoy the journey. I'll see you on the next Greenway.